My prince, please. My prince, no. Please don't do this. I am betrothed. Please. Let me go, my prince. Please. The palace maid cried as she struggled to get away from the prince. Her struggling was in vain. The prince overpowered her and forcefully had his way with her. She was not his first victim. Neither was she going to be his last. So many maidens had suffered the same fate in the hands of Ikemefuna, the evil crown prince. Many years ago, there lived a king in a peaceful land called Umuido. The people of Umuido loved their king because he was a very good king. The king made his people very happy, but he was a sad man. He married the most beautiful woman in Umuido, and their marriage was filled with love. But the gods of Umuido denied them the happiness of having their own children. Gods of our land, what have I done to deserve this? I have served you all my life, so what am I being punished for? The king lamented his situation every day while his queen always cried herself to sleep. Patient, patient, you will have a child when the time is right. The chief priest of Umuido had said when the king summoned him to know why the gods were silent about his childlessness. The king was impatient, he couldn't wait anymore. He became relentless until his heart desire was finally granted. The queen became pregnant and their joy knew no bounds. The king walked on eggshells around the queen until she gave birth some months later. Finally, the king had a son, an heir to his throne. He was very happy, and the people of Umuido were happy for him too. Behold my son, the one who will rule Umuido after me his father. He shall be called Ikemefuna. The king declared, carefully raising his newborn child who was wrapped in a white cloth towards the sky the day he was born. The entire villagers celebrated the birth of Prince Ikemefuna, not knowing that he would be the one that would desecrate the land. The queen never had another child after Prince Ikemefuna, so he was over-pampered. He got everything he wanted. The only time his father ever denied him something was when he asked for the head of a guard. I want his head. Give me the head of this cord. I want his head. Prince Ikemefuna kept crying for days. He was just 7 years old at the time. It's safe to say that Prince Ikemefuna was a tyrant from birth. He was nothing like his father, who was a compassionate ruler. As Prince Ikemefuna grew older, the monster in him was unleashed, and he began to commit atrocities in the land. At 17, he had already started forcing himself on the palace maids, and as time went on, he started going out of the palace to force himself on innocent maidens. In Umuido, it was a taboo for an unmarried girl not to be a virgin. Such maidens were not suitable for any man in Umuido to marry. Prince Ikemefuna knew this. His father taught him everything he needed to know about their kingdom from a very young age. He was well aware of the customs and traditions guiding Umuido. He went around defiling the innocent maidens of the land. When the people of Umuido became tired of Prince Ikemefuna's abominable act, they decided to report the matter to their king. Your Majesty, that is what has been happening in this village. We kept quiet all this while because of the love we have for you, but we are tired. The man who led the villagers to the king had said, Yes, we are tired of the prince defiling our daughters. The villagers chorused angrily. Our daughters cannot go out and fetch water for us again. Our daughters can no longer go out and fetch firewood for us. They can't even step out of the house because of the prince. A woman among the crowd shouted, Who will marry our daughters after what the prince did? Another woman shouted from the crowd. The king was shocked. He knew that his son could be very insensitive, but he never knew that he could be so wicked. My son can never do such a thing. The queen shouted at the villagers. She was blinded by the love she had for her son, so she didn't want to hear anything against him. The king was still thinking of what to say when the villagers started shouting and running away. The king was wondering what was happening when he saw his son with a bow and arrow. Prince Ikemefuna had fired an arrow at one of the villagers, and he was ready to fire more arrows. So the villagers had to run for their lives. What have I done to deserve you as my son? The king sorrowfully said to his son as he watched his people who were running helter-skelter for their lives. "My king, you don't have to say that to our son." Those people were obviously lying, so he had to teach them a lesson, the queen said, supporting her son. He could never be wrong in her eyes. "Will you keep quiet? How can you not see anything wrong with what he has done?" The king shouted at the queen for the very first time in many years. The queen became very angry and walked away in tears. "Father," Prince Ikemefuna wanted to say something, but his father interrupted him. "You are too evil to be my son. Guards, seize him." The king thundered, and the guards quickly did what they were ordered to do. "You will be punished according to the law of our land," the king shouted, but this only made Prince Ikemefuna laugh. Adeaze, although the guards were still holding him, but he was not bothered. "The law of the land? You mean you are going to hang me to death? You and I know that you cannot do that, father. I am your only child, your heir. Who will rule this kingdom after you if you kill me?" Prince Ikemefuna asked his father mockingly. "Take him to the dungeon," the king shouted angrily. "Adeaze, Adeaze." Prince Ikemefuna continued laughing as the guards took him away. The king was very sad. He just wished that he could kill Ikemefuna and save the maidens of the village, but he couldn't. One of the law of Umuido was that a rapist must be hanged to death, but that the king couldn't bring himself to kill his successor. He remembered how he waited for a child for years. After thinking for days, the king decided to release his son. "My son, please don't do it again. If you want me to marry a wife for you, just pick a maiden and she shall be yours. I promise. Even if you want to marry 10 women from this village, I will marry them for you. Please, don't force yourself on any woman again," the king pleaded with his son. "Okay, father. I won't do it again. I am sorry." Prince Ikemefuna apologized, but the next minute, he went back to his evil ways. Prince Ikemefuna became even more wicked after his release. He was angry at the people of Umuido for reporting him to his father. This time, he didn't stop at forcing himself on the maidens of Umuido. He took the abomination to another level by forcing himself on married women too. The once peaceful land became chaotic because of Prince Ikemefuna. Some people who had relatives in the neighboring villages ran away from Umuido, while the ones who had nowhere to go stayed back to face Prince Ikemefuna's wrath. The king threatened to kill his son on many occasions, but he never did. Prince Ikemefuna continued carrying out his evil act until a beautiful maiden arrived at the palace one day. "My mother sent me to fetch firewood for her, and I lost my way in the forest. I don't know where to go," the beautiful maiden had said to the king in tears. "What is the name of your village?" the king asked. "Adeaze," she replied. The king was confused. He had never heard of a village called Adeaze before, but he wanted to help. "Okay, you can stay here until my guards find your village. What is your name?" the king asked. "Nneka," the beautiful maiden replied. That was how Nneka found her way into the palace. The king's guard kept searching for the village called Adeaze, but it looked like it didn't exist. Nneka began to work in the palace as one of the maids, and Prince Ikemefuna, who had liked her from the first day she stepped into the palace, began to make his usual plans. Nneka was in the room which she shared with other maids in the palace one night when a guard came to call her. "The prince wants to see you immediately," the palace guard said to her. It is time," Nneka mumbled to herself before following the palace guard. The palace guard took Nneka to Prince Ikemefuna's room. The prince was sitting on his bed when they entered the room. "You can leave," Prince Ikemefuna said to the guard, and he left immediately, leaving Nneka to face the prince alone. "Come here," the prince ordered Nneka, and she walked up to him without hesitation. He quickly stood up from the bed and grabbed Nneka, but to his surprise, Nneka did not struggle with him. Prince Ikemefuna pushed Nneka on his bed, and as usual, he forced himself on her. He wondered why Nneka wasn't struggling with him. He had forced himself on so many maidens, but this time, he felt so different. If only he knew that he had just forced himself on fire. He had so many questions to ask Nneka, but he didn't even ask before he started getting his answers. Ikemefuna, Ikemefuna, Ikemefuna. Nneka shouted 3 times and the prince jumped up from the bed in fear. Nneka sounded strangely authoritative, and for the first time in his life, he was scared. Today marks the end of your atrocities in Umuido. Anything that has a beginning must surely have an end. I am your end, Ikemefuna. Nneka's voice was not only heard by the prince, it was heard by the entire people of Umuido. Her voice was so loud and it came thunder, making the people of Umuido tremble in fear. What is happening? What is happening? Gods of our land, please save us. The villagers shouted as they all ran into their houses. Please, please, don't kill me, Ikemefuna pleaded as he tried to find his way out of the room. Nneka had turned into a scary-looking creature who was now floating in the air. The door was locked and it didn't give way no matter how hard the prince tried to open it. Hey aha! I won't kill you, Ikemefuna, but you will wish that you had begged me to kill you, the scary creature said before disappearing into the air. Nneka was sent to put an end to Ikemefuna's atrocities by the angry gods of Umuido. The gods heard the cry of the people of Umuido, and they sent the goddess of justice to rescue them. If Prince Ikemefuna hadn't slept with Nneka, maybe he would have been spared, but he fell into the trap because of his nature. The king of Umuido was asked to be patient, but he wasn't patient enough. That was why he went in search of solution to his childlessness from Adeaze, the cursed deity. Adeaze was once worshipped in Umuido. It brought instant solution to any problem brought before it, but it was thrown into the evil forest when it began to demand for the heads of people of Umuido. When the king got tired of his situation, he went back to the evil forest where Adeaze was thrown away and asked for one last favor, a child. Adeaze granted the king's wish. It gave the king a son, and it stopped the king from having another child when the gods were finally ready to bless him. That child was Ikemefuna. Adeaze was angry at the people of Umuido, and Ikemefuna was their punishment. Thankfully, the gods of Umuido came through for them. Prince Ikemefuna's life never remained the same after his encounter with Nneka. He lost consciousness after the scary creature disappeared, and when he regained consciousness, he found himself in darkness forever. The prince had gone blind, and not only that, his manhood was taken away from him. He didn't want to stay alive without his sight, but death ran far away from him. Please take my life. Take my life and save me from this torture. Prince Ikemefuna kept begging every day. The king and queen did everything for their son to be well again, but Prince Ikemefuna remained like that for the rest of his life. The people of Umuido were liberated, peace returned to the land again, and the women could walk freely in the village without fear. The king died few years later, and the kingship of Umuido moved to another family. The king's greatest fear came to pass. He didn't want to lose the throne after his death. That was why he ran to Adeaze for a child without waiting for the gods to bless him. The devil never gives anyone anything for free. Learn to be patient because God's time is the best.